Hello everybody and welcome to another edition of In Pit Lane. Well, as you can see, not in the studio once again, here at the luxuriously appointed corporate headquarters of In Pit Lane, beyond the suburban curtain overlooking beautiful Lake Geneva. Hopefully we'll get back in the studio sooner rather than later, and hopefully this time around we'll be able to stay more than 1 or 2 weeks. But coming up this week on the program, my first race meeting live that I attended in person was back in about 1973 at the Tasman meeting at Sandown. It was a great meeting. Frank Matic and Graham McRae had a fantastic duel in the Formula 5000s. The Tasman Series was huge back in the day. Back in the 1960s, all the top Formula 1 drivers, Jackie Stewart, Jim Clark, Graham Hill, they'd all come over here for the Tasman Series over the European winter and take part. It was 4 races in New Zealand, 4 races in Australia, and as I said, absolutely huge. Well, now the Tasman Series is coming back. At this stage, no races in New Zealand due to the current pandemic situation, but that's certainly on the plan for the future. And to find out more about the return of the Tasman and what's being planned for both this year and in the long-term future, we're going to be joined by the voice of S5000 racing in Australia, their chief commentator, Richard Craill. He'll be joining us a little bit later on in the program. Also, Audi have done so many amazing things in terms of innovation in motorsport. They are probably the number one marque in the world at the moment. If you go back to the way that they changed rallying with the Quattro, the Group B Quattro, that brute of a thing that absolutely dominated the World Rally Championship. Then have a look at what they did at Le Mans with the R8. Years of domination in world sports car racing. The R10, the first diesel-powered car to win the Le Mans 24 hours, and then going all the way through to the most recent car, the R18, which was both a combination of the diesel engine and also with an electric motor as well. So the first hybrid, the first diesel-electric hybrid ever to win the Le Mans Championship as well, in the Le Mans 24-hour race. Well, Audi have got something new planned, and they're going to take on the Dakar Rally with something very, very different indeed. And we're going to take you out tonight showing you exactly what they've got planned. It's an all-electric... well, is it? Is it an all-electric challenge? No, I don't think it is, but you decide that. But anyway, let's find out what's been happening over the weekend. It hasn't been a huge weekend of motorsport, but there has been some things happening, some of it very important indeed, and some of it very exciting for young Australian racing drivers. Let's find out all about it in the In Pit Lane Motorsport News. After 23 years in supercars, including 13 years of team ownership, the Kelly brothers, Todd and Rick, have decided to call it a day on supercar team ownership. After forming a partnership with the Grove Group at the start of 2021, the Kelly brothers have agreed to sell their remaining 50% stake to the Groves at the end of this season. Kelly Racing will retain full ownership of the team CNC shop, the engine department and all production departments, as well as the current Gen 2 Mustangs. In a statement released on Monday, Rick Kelly thanked the team's staff and fans for their support over the past few years. I have appreciated working with such a great bunch of guys and girls, building many great working relationships and friendships along the way. I want to thank each and every team member, both current and those who have worked with us along the way, for their efforts and dedication shown towards Todd, myself and our team, he said. Speaking on behalf of the Grove Group, Stephen Grove said, "It's an honour to continue the journey of Kelly Grove Racing and to build upon the foundations built by Todd and Rick. Grove Motorsport look forward to taking the mantle forward and competing at the highest level of Australian motorsport. I'd like to thank Todd and Rick for their commitment and contribution in building Kelly Grove Racing to what it is today and appreciate their trust in Grove Motorsport to take the team to the next level." Round 2 of the new look DTM and 2 new winners. Held on the Lausitzring, this year's race incorporated more of the track's banked oval, and both drivers and fans were delighted. The third round on Saturday saw a maiden win to 28-year-old Swiss driver Philip Elias, behind the wheel of an AMG Mercedes, who came out on top against round 1 winner New Zealand driver Liam Lawson in the Red Bull Ferrari. Former champion Mike Rockefeller took the last step of the podium by finishing third with the Audi. Maximilian Gott scored his maiden DTM race win on Sunday. once again followed home by Red Bull Junior driver Liam Lawson and South African Kelvin van der Linde in an Audi in third place. Van der Linde remains in the lead of the championship, only 3 points up on Lawson as the series heads to the Zolder circuit in Belgium in 2 weeks' time. A great weekend for young Australian driver Christian Manson with a win at Spa in the British Formula 3 Series. Manson secured his second win of the season in the first race of the weekend. In difficult conditions on a drying track, the Australian started third on the grid, but passed pole sitter Bart Horston on the opening lap and then blasted past teammate Zach O'Sullivan for the lead on lap 4. Polish driver Roman Balinski claimed his first podium in third place after a forceful drive that saw plenty of tight overtaking moves and lots of wheel banging. Balinski went on to claim his first series victory in race 2. The Polish driver, in just his 5th British Formula 3 race, started 4th on the grid and moved into the lead on lap 2. O'Sullivan was second again for Carlin, while Mansell's great weekend continued after he passed pole sitter Horston for third on the final lap. Sunday's reverse grid race saw a win to Roberto Faria, claiming his first British Formula 3 race victory. Manson was 6th, having started 13th for Carlin, while teammate and championship leader O'Sullivan held on to 7th. Jonathan Rea took 3 wins from 3 starts to extend his championship lead in the World Superbike Championship. Rea dominated the weekend at Assen to win his 15th race at the famous Dutch circuit. Rea has now moved even further ahead in the World Championship battle. Steve Torrence kept his hopes alive to sweep the NHRA's 3-race Western Swing on Sunday, powering to the top fuel victory at the 33rd annual NHRA Sonoma Nationals. Torrence ran a 3.75 at 527.83 kilometres per hour to beat Leah Pruitt in the final round by just 200th of a second. Robert Height's dominance at Sonoma continued, beating defending world champion Matt Hagan in the final round of Funny Car. Aaron Stanfield won a thrilling duel of young standouts in the Pro Stock final round, slipping past rookie Dallas Glenn for the win. And Karen Stoffer capped off a big weekend in Pro Stock motorcycle, winning for the first time since 2019, taking out Andrew Hines in the final round. And that's the In Pit Lane news for the week commencing Monday, July 27th, 2021. We'll have more news next week. You're watching In Pit Lane. When we come back, we're going to be joined by the voice of Australian S5000 Racing and Carrera Cup and a whole bunch of other race meetings around Australia. A man you know well, he is Richard Craill, and he's going to be talking to us about the revival of the Tasman Series coming up later this year for S5000. That's when In Pit Lane returns right after this break. Don't go away, we'll be right back. Well, welcome back to In Pit Lane. Well, about 25 or, well, no longer than that now, or probably about 40 years ago now, the first race meetings I ever went to live was the 1973 Tasman Series out at Sandown. The Tasman Series was a huge series back in the day. Drivers and cars from all over the world would come and compete. There were 4 races in New Zealand, 4 races in Australia, and as I said, it was just a huge thing back in the day. Well, now the Tasman Series is coming back. It's going to be raced later on this year, this time for the new S5000 cars. No New Zealand races this time around because of the current situation, but that's certainly on the long-term plan. And to find out more about the series and S5000 in general is the voice of S5000 Racing in Australia, series commentator Richard Craill. Richard, welcome to In Pit Lane.
Nice to be back, Brett. It's been a long time. How are you?
It has been a while, yes. It was quite some time ago that you were here. I think we actually called the Macau Grand Prix back in the day at one stage. Yes, back from this very space. So that was a long time ago. So you've had plenty of experience over the years. I would suspect that you're sort of somewhat like me in that you're very much an open wheel enthusiast. Tell us about the situation with the Tasman Series this year. What are we going to see, and when are we going to see it?
Definitely a long-term open wheel fan. Growing up in Adelaide, the Grand Prix was in my backyard, so that was my introduction to motorsport. Yeah, look, exciting, I think, for motorsport to bring the Tasman Series back. It's such an iconic brand that resonates not just here and in New Zealand, but in the UK especially, but also Europe, because so many great drivers from that part of the world would come down to Australia to play here in summer over a compact 8-week series. So it was always in the pipeline to bring it back with S5000. The category was designed to be more than just an Australian championship. It's always had the potential to race in New Zealand, in Southeast Asia, perhaps further abroad, who knows. But I think the pandemic and the current situation with the ever chopping and changing calendar, and especially the cancellation of the Australian Grand Prix again, unfortunately this year, has moved the time frame up a little bit. Initial plans were for S5000 to run a 3-round Triple Crown series at the Grand Prix at the Bathurst International in November, and then on the Gold Coast on the streets in December as a really cool championship. Grand Prix didn't happen, needed a way to retool that, I suppose, and a decision as well to focus S5000 on 2 separate championships, one of which is the Gold Star, which will run in the usual calendar year, and then the second of which is what we now know as the Tasman Series, which will run over summer.
The interesting thing will be, what's the feedback been like from New Zealand? I mean, they've already got a really successful summer series now with the Toyota Racing Series. We've spoken about that in the past on the program. What's the feedback from over there? I mean, is there any disquiet over there, in fact, that you might be sort of, S5000 might be sort of, jumping in and taking over, or can the two categories live together?
Yeah, I think they can. I think they're aimed at different markets. And certainly the reception we've had from Motorsport New Zealand has been great. Elton Goonan, who's the CEO there, has completely embraced this. And they and their counterparts over here at Motorsport Australia have been very good. And it might not be known, but to bring the Tasman Cup, which is the trophy you get at the end of it, back, it needed sign-off from both Motorsport Australia and Motorsport New Zealand. And they both embraced that at board level and said, yep, we love that idea. We want to bring it back. I think they're aimed at different markets. TRS is an unbelievable championship that's geared towards young drivers, and their list of success that they've had with drivers coming through, earning their stripes in that really compact 2 or 3 or 4 round championship, and then going on to bigger and better things like Formula One. It speaks for itself. I don't think there's a clash. I think if anything, it complements, but even in its first championship, S5000's aimed at a slightly different demographic. It's not aimed necessarily at those 16-year-old kids. It's aimed at drivers who are perhaps a little bit further along the rung of the open wheel ladder.
Is that a part of the equation that might be missing in Australia at the moment? I mean, talking to a lot of the guys, I mean, we've had a lot of them on the show. Cooper Webster most recently, of course, Joey Mawson, Tom Randall, all of those guys have been on. And, the jump, I mean, in the case of someone like Cooper Webster, did an amazing job, but they've jumped basically straight out of karts and pretty much into S5000. I mean, is that the next step is coming up with that sort of halfway house between karts and S5000?
Yeah, it's the $1 million question, isn't it, Brett? And it's probably been the $1 million question in Australian motor racing for as long as Australian motor racing's been around. What's that intermediate category? I think what Cooper Webster proved this year, and other guys like Antonio Astudi and a couple of other of the young kids, Nathan Hearn, they proved that you can be a young kid, step straight into 5,000 and be on the money. And Cooper's a great example. He was outstanding, especially in the wet. His drive at Phillip Island's one of the best drives I've seen all year, and the way he held off Thomas Randall to win that race was extraordinary. Yeah, can it do both? Yes, I think it can. Does there need to be another step before it? It's probably worthwhile that there's a category in between to get a bit more experienced, so you're not jumping cold into a 560 horsepower beast like a 5,000 is. But yeah, that's for people smarter than I to work out, Brett. The Australian motor racing scene has always battled with its open wheel pathways. It's been well documented and on your show and in all the rest of the media as well. So how that plays out, I'm not sure.
So what are we seeing? As you said, the Bathurst International. I mean, the prospect of S5000s around Mount Panorama. I remember when it was first raised. I remember speaking with Eugene Aroca at the time, and he was saying, "Oh, we want to see this happen. We so want to see this happen, but whether it can or not, now it looks like. I mean, they can. It's happening. You've obviously got to be looking forward to that."
Oh, mate. Fantastic. We had Braden Wilmington run his car at the Bathurst 6 Hour earlier this year. He did 2 10-minute sessions. And the thing that grabbed me the most was that as he was grabbing gears coming up towards Reed Park, so out of the cutting and from down in the pit building, you can see where the old Mark Taylor Fujitsu bridge is there at Reed Park, and you can hear him grabbing gears. And it's 2 Ks away as the crow flies in a straight line up there. It was awesome. Really, really cool. I think they're going to be spectacular there. Look, people have had some concerns. I don't share them. The cars aren't going to be dramatically quicker than the cars that we've seen there in the past, be they a supercar. I think GT3 cars will be faster from a Bathurst 12-hour spec GT car because they've got so much more aero. They'll make up all that time across the top of the mountain. 5000s don't have an enormous amount of downforce, so they're not a massive aero race car.
Now, obviously, this is something you're going to be talking about on your podcast, which it goes right around Australia, right around the world on the grid. Tell us about that this week and where people can catch up with that.
Yeah, OTG's going along nicely. Me and my colleagues, Tony Shebeki and Mark Walker, punch that out every week. And we're very fortunate. My good friends at Radio Show Limited, Radio Le Mans, who I know you've talked to as well, that come out and have some fun with me at the 12-hour every year. And hopefully we can do that again soon. They're good enough to carry that on their international network too. So we try and talk about Aussie motorsport with a world approach as well. So people overseas in the UK and the States can get an idea about what's going on. It's pretty simple. Head to the racetalk.com. It's up there every week, weekly podcast, but we're on all the RSS feeds and you can subscribe through Spotify or Apple Podcasts or Google or wherever it is you get your listening fix from. So it's a fun little show, mate. We just call it like it is, talk about the topics, get some good guests on, have some chats, and just talk about a mutual love of car racing, really.
No doubt about it. Well, we could talk about open wheelers and the state of the world of open wheelers and sports cars and all sorts of things for hours, but unfortunately we're right out of time right now. The restrictions of commercial television, as you are well aware. But for now, thanks for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you, first of all, out at Sandown for the Shannons Nationals, but also with the Tasman Series when it runs at the Bathurst International and on the streets of the Gold Coast. But for now, Richard Craill, thanks for joining us in Pit Lane.
Thanks, Brett. Anytime.
Yes, thank you too, Richard Craill, for jumping in and telling us all about the Tasman Series. Very exciting news. When we come back after the break, we're going to take you to Germany to see some of the behind-the-scenes design and the construction of a unique new challenger for the Dakar Rally. It's Audi's newest project in the world of motorsport. It's they're calling it an all-electric challenge, but I've got my doubts about that. We'll find out more about that when we return. You're watching In Pit Lane. Don't go away. We'll be right back. The show may be over, but the motorsport chat continues with Full Course Yellow, the In Pit Lane after party. We're on the In Pit Lane YouTube channel live most Thursday nights at 9:30, straight after In Pit Lane here on Channel 31. So, why not join us? Yes, I hope you'll join us for Full Course Yellow every Thursday night following In Pit Lane live here on Channel 31 and on the In Pit Lane YouTube channel. Now, Audi, of course, have been dominating motorsport in various forms and categories for many years now, going back to the days of the World Rally Championship, their time in IMSA and Trans Am racing, and also, of course, their domination at the Le Mans 24-hour race with a number of different innovative cars over a number of years. Now, they took a break for a while, but they are coming back to Le Mans and also the North American Sports Car Championship. But before they do that, they've got another little project. They're taking on probably the world's most challenging endurance event, the Dakar Rally, and they're doing it in a very, very different way indeed. But then, knowing Audi, they wouldn't have it any
Imagine we are coming from round track racing. We pretty much know the racetracks, we know the surface, we know the racing format, we know the competitors. A lot of time is spent in the simulators trying to prepare as good as possible. Dakar, to me, for us being developers, it's almost like, a pirate's treasure. You open it up and you don't really know what to expect. Before we even thought about Dakar, we at Audi Sport Racing asked ourselves the question, how could the future powertrain look like? And this is why we came up with what we call the energy converter concept, which is scalable and really adapts to every use case in racing. The car has an electronic drive unit on each axle. They are identical and they are not mechanically linked. There is, let's say, a mid-differential which is simulated per software. The energy for the e-drives comes either from the high-voltage battery or the energy converter. The energy for the battery comes from, brake recuperation or the energy converter. And the energy converter itself consists of a four-cylinder turbocharged engine, which we developed for DTM, and that is directly linked to a generator. And that generator, by the way, is also a drive system from the Formula E. So actually there are three in the car. And all those components, very complex, are obviously, controlled and linked with the vehicle control unit, the VCU we have in the car. The e-drive were developed for Formula E. So they are state-of-the-art, highly efficient, system efficiency, greater 97%. We did a few adaptations on the cooling side, a few adaptations on how the system is integrated in the car, some changes on the internals, but only for robustness reasons. And of course, the software, we always work on the software. Thinking about the car, the jumps, digging into the sand, hitting stuff, stones, holes, etc. I think all components will be stressed extremely. You have hot days, cool nights, you have high altitude. The energy management has to deal with all those situations which can't be foreseen. And I think that will be one of the biggest challenges in the whole project. When you look at the car, just by looking at it, you'll see Vorsprung durch Technik.
It's a fascinating vehicle, for sure. It's a very, very complex. I have to say it's probably one of the most complex cars I've seen in my life. It's a little bit like going to the moon, because I can consider that the people who designed the rocket to go to the moon didn't know what they have to expect, and it's the same for us, I think, today as well. You can be the fastest car, but you will be not able to win if you don't have reliability. You can have the best driver, without reliability he will be nowhere. So first you have to finish before you can finish first, and in this case first you have to finish. Forget all the rest. The rest will come as a nice present.
Yes, another interesting project there by Audi. As I said, probably the company that has done more in terms of innovation in modern motorsport than any other company over the last few decades. And it'll be interesting to see that machine back in action. But really, you can't call it an all-electric Challenger when it's powered by a generator, and that generator is a 2-litre turbocharged DTM engine. But anyway, it's an interesting challenge, an interesting bit of engineering, and we'll keep a track on it later on early in the new year when the Dakar Rally begins and is run. That's all we got time for this week on In Pit Lane. Hope you'll join us again same time next week here on Channel 31. Remember, Full Course Yellow coming up directly after the program on the In Pit Lane YouTube channel. But right now, from all of us here at the program, thanks for joining us. See you next week, and bye for now.